Welcome to my channel. They say a mother knows her child better than anyone else. But that night proved I didn't know everything. He wasn't supposed to be home. I wasn't supposed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. But when the door opened unexpectedly, and I saw him standing there, older, changed, but still my boy, something in the air shifted. What followed was something I never imagined. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city and they commence. I want to know who's with me before I take you into the quietest, most unforgettable night of my life. Let me tell you everything from the very beginning. It was one of those rare, quiet evenings where the silence in the house didn't feel heavy, but peaceful. My name is Hannah. I'm 55 now, though some mornings I feel every bit of it and more. That particular Thursday, I had the place to myself, or so I thought. I'd had a long bath after work, soaking the ache from my shoulders, sipping a glass of red wine I had opened, more out of habit than desire. The house was dim, lit only by the flicker of the hallway lamp and the soft orange glow of the salt lamp in the living room. I was in my robe, hair towel dried but still damp, just letting the silence stretch. Ethan, my son, was supposed to be staying over at his friend's place. He was 19, independent in all the ways a mother could hope for, but still tethered to me in small ways. Text messages, the occasional late-night chat in the kitchen, the familiar clink of his cereal bowl in the morning. So when front door clicked and opened softly, far too early for midnight, far too late for casual guests, I stiffened. I didn't panic. You learn not to after raising a boy alone, but I held my breath as I pulled my robe tighter and stepped into the hallway, and there he was. Ethan, standing in the entryway, backpack half zipped, hoodie askew, and a strange look in his face. He looked surprised to see me, like maybe he had expected the house set to be empty. Ethan? I asked, my voice low, at least with surprise. His eyes met mine, and something flickered there, something I couldn't quite place. Hey, Mom, he said, his voice softer than usual. Sorry, plans changed. I didn't text. I shook my head. No, but it's okay. I'm just glad you're safe. He kicked off his shoes, setting his bag gently on the floor, like he didn't want to break the mood. The air felt strangely delicate between us, like a quiet thread had tightened, and neither of us wanted taut up too hard. I hadn't seen him this close in weeks. Since starting community college and working part-time. He'd been busy and he let him be. I never wanted to be feckin' of mother who clung too tightly, but I missed him. I realized just then how much. Want some tea? I offered, backing into the kitchen. He hesitated, then followed. Sure, we moved around each other in the tiny kitchen, like dancers who hadn't practiced in a while. I reached for the kettle. He grabbed 2 mugs. I caught him watching me as I stirred honey into his cup, not staring, just observing, thoughtful. You okay? I asked, setting his mug down. He nodded. Yeah, just tired and thinking. I leaned against the counter, my rope falling slightly open at the neckline, and suddenly I was aware of it. That oil still wrapped around my damp hair, the faint sheen of lotion still glistening on my skin. I pulled the robe closed instinctively, and he looked away, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Long night? Sked. He took a sip of tea. Not really. Just I didn't feel like being around Everyana till night. Too loud. Too much energy. He went it quiet. I understood that more than he knew. Sometimes I said, we don't realize how much we need stillness until we're standing in it. He nodded slowly, high sighs settling on me again. Yeah, exactly. There was something new in his gaze. Not childish dependence, not teenager rebellion. Something more grounded, curious, maybe even protective. He sat down at the kitchen table, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. I followed him and sat across, and for a few long moments we just sipped our tea in silence. You always do that, he said suddenly. Do what? Speak like that. All wise and calm, like it's okay to feel things. It blinked, taken, off guard. Well, it's okay to feel things. He chuckled lightly. I know. I didn't always feel like I can. Not with anyone else. The weight of his words settled in my chest. I hadn't expected this. Not tonight. Not from him. I'm glad you can with me, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. Ethan leaned back in the chair, limplight casting soft shadows across his face. You know, he said quietly, sometimes I don't know if I'm doing anything right. Everyone expects me to know what I want. School, work, life, girls, and half the time I'm just pretending. My heart ached for him, but I didn't reach out. Not yet. I let these ones offer him space. I don't know how to tell people when I feel overwhelmed, he continued. But you'll make it easier. I swallowed hard. That means a lot to him. He looked at me then not just as his mother, but as someone who truly saw him. And in that moment, I felt something shift, not in a way that broke any rules, not in a way that was wrong, but in a way that felt human deeply. So there were two souls bonded, not just by blood, but by a growing mutual understanding that transcended age, role, and expectation. And it all started with him coming home merely. He stood up first. I think I'll take a shower and head to bed. Not a dot, of course. Towels are fresh. You know where everything is, as he disappeared down the hallway. Is that alone in the kitchen, the air still warm with unspoken truths. I sipped the rest of my tea slowly, staring into the steam. That night, something began. Not a moment of madness or confusion, but of discovery. Of two people reconnecting in ways they didn't expect, with walls gently lowered and hearts carefully opened. And I had no idea what the next day would bring, but for the first time in a long while, was looking forward to it. The next morning started quietly, just like the night had ended. The house was still, save for the distant hum of the fridge and the soft creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee into my favorite old mug, the one Ethan had painted for me in third grade. The letters were chipped now, but I could still make out number on mom in crooked, colorful strokes. He wasn't sure if he was still asleep or just taking his time waking up. And honestly, I wasn't in a rush to find out. I needed a minute because something had changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it had. The way he'd looked at me last night, the softness in his words, the vulnerability he hadn't shown in years, it was still with me, resting somewhere in the center of my chest. And the strangest part, I didn't feel burdened by it. I felt awake, like some door in my mind had quietly opened while I wasn't paying attention. I was still standing by the window when I heard the bathroom door opened up, footsteps, then a pause in the hallway. I didn't turn around. I just waited that morning, Ethan said, his voice husky from sleep. I looked over my shoulder. He was barefoot, shirtless, in loose sweet pants that clung wide to his hips. His hair was still damp from his shower, curling a little around his temples, something. He always hated, though I always thought it made him look more like the little boy I used to chase around the backyard. Coffee? I asked, lifting the pot. He nodded and came closer. Please, I barely slept. I poured him a cup and handed it over. Our fingers brushed just briefly, but I noticed it. He did too. I could feel it in the way he hesitated just half a second. Too long before pulling his hand back. He took a slow sip and leaned against the counter next to me, both of us looking out the window into the early light. The garden was quiet. Dew clung to the grass. A single bird fluttered across the fence. You? No, he said after a long pause. I didn't come home merely by accident. I turned to him curious, no. He shook his head. I didn't want to be around everyone else last night. It wasn't about the noise. It was about not feeling seen that word again. I bit my lip. You feel like I see you. He turned toward me now, his face open, eyes clear. Yeah, you always have. I felt something warm spread through me, maternal. Yes, but also something more personal as a woman, as a human being. Think I said slowly. That's one of the most powerful things we can offer Simeon, to truly see them. Not just for what they've been, but who they're becoming. He nodded, staring into his cup. You've always done that for me. I let the sealant stretch again. It wasn't awkward. It was meaningful. Like our hearts were catching up with our words. You've grown a lot, Ethan, I said finally. Sometimes I forget. You're still my son, but you're not a boy anymore. His expression shifted. Not smug, not proud. Just honest that sometimes I don't feel like I'm either. That hit me hard because I remembered that feeling too of being in between. Of not knowing where you fit, of needing Simeon to hold space for you without asking questions you weren't ready to answer. So I stepped a little closer. You didn't have to have it all figured out, I said softly. Not now, not about tomorrow, but I'll always be here. no matter where you were in that in-between. He looked at me for a long moment. I couldn't read all of what was behind his gaze, but I felt it. Gratitude, yes, but also something more complex. Something intimate and curious, something neither of us had dared name. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. It wasn't a quick hug. It was full, warm, and quiet and grounding. My hands rested gently on his back, and he let myself sink into it, heart to heart, chest to chest. He was taller than me now, broader, but still somehow fit against me like he always had. Only this time I noticed the heat of his skin, the strength of his arms, the softness of the space between us. When we finally pulled apart, he lingered just slightly, his face close to mine. Our eyes met. There was something there, something unspoken, not inappropriate, not forced, just deeply felt and strangely new. "I'm glad I came home," he said. I nodded, my throat tight. Me too. That day, we spent more time together than we had in months. We cooked lunch side by side, laughing over old memories. We cleaned out the garage, found a photo album I hadn't opened in years, and ended up sitting cross-legged on the floor, flipping through pictures for hours. Some of them made us laugh till cried. Others made us just sit still, quiet in the weight of everything time had given and taken. It was easy, and yet something kept pulsing underneath the surface. Some new layer of connection, raw and unfamiliar. Evening after dinner, I poured another glass of wine. But this time, I wasn't alone. Effin sat across from me in the living room, legs stretched out, fingers tracing the rim of his glass like he was lost in thought. "I keep thinking about what you said this morning," you murmured. I'd looked at him. "About what?" "About being seen and becoming." I waited. He took a breath. "What if I'm becoming Somyeon I don't fully understand yet?" I smiled faintly. "Then you're exactly where you were supposed to be." I nodded, eyes locked on mine again. "Andy, are okay?" "Just peeing with me in that place." There it was. The question I hadn't asked last night, the thing that had hovered between our words. Ursulines, our every brush of fingertips and lingering glance. I didn't answer with a speech. I just set my wine down, stood up, walked to him slowly, and reached out. He looked at my hand for a second, then he took it. That moment was everything. Two people, mother and son, yes, but also something deeper now. Two souls reaching across time, pain, roles, and expectations to just see each other fully, completely, without shame. That night didn't end with answers, but it did end with the understanding that something was growing, and neither of us were turning away from it. The next few days unfolded with a quiet kind of intensity, like we were both tiptoeing around something secret that neither of us dared disturb too suddenly. Ethan didn't go back to his friend's place. He stayed, and I didn't ask when he'd leave again. I think we both understood without ever saying if it something between us had shifted. and we were still figuring out what it meant. Every interaction carried a strange new electricity dot. It wasn't overt, and it never crossed any line, but it was there. In the way he watched me when I moved around the kitchen, and the way I caught myself remembering the warmth of his chest when hugged me, in the way neither of us hurried to leave the room when the other entered. We spoke often, but sometimes it was the silence that said the most. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the living room, soft music playing in the background. The sun was streaming in through the window, turning everything gold. I didn't notice Ethan had come in until I looked up and saw him standing at the edge of the room watching me. Hadn't speak, just looked at me, almost like he was seeing me again for the first time. "You okay?" I asked. Hess stepped closer and sat beside me on the couch. Close but not touching. "Yeah, just thinking," I nodded about. He hesitated, then said softly, "How different things feel now." It froze for a breath. The shirt in my hands forgotten different how. He didn't look away, like I see you differently. Not just as my mom, but as a person, a woman. My breath caught. That was the first time he'd acknowledged it out loud. I set the laundry aside slowly. Carefully. My heart was beating too fast, but my voice stayed calm. "And what do you see?" He smiled gently, almost like he was embarrassed by the honesty. In his own words, "Someone who's strong, beautiful, quietly hurting sometimes. Someone who never asks for anything but gives everything." I looked down at my hands, unsure of what to do with the emotion swelling inside me. No one had spoken to me like that in a very long time, maybe ever. "Ethan," I said carefully, "they're seeing parts of me that even I forget, or rather." He reached out then, his hand brushing mine. Not holding it, not yet just letting the touch linger. "Long enough to be felt. I don't want to forget them," he said, "and I don't want you to forget either." We sat in silence again, but this time it was thick with unspoken feelings. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My fingers curled slightly under. His not quite holding, but not pulling away. I was trembling a little, not from fear, but from recognition. From the awareness that something sacred and impossible was blooming in the space who had unknowingly prepared for years. Not lust. Not confusion, but a deeper kind of intimacy that had quietly grown out of vulnerability, honesty, and time. Later that evening, I was in the kitchen finishing up dinner when I felt his presence behind me. I turned, and there was, shirt damp from the rain, hair tousled, eyes wide with something I couldn't read. "I went for a walk," Hess said. "Had to think?" I nodded. "Find any answers?" "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. "Or maybe I just accepted. I'm not afraid of the questions anymore." I turned off the stove and faced him fully, my back against the counter. He looked at me for a long time. "I keep remembering what you said, that it's okay to be in between, that you'll be here." I meant it, I whispered. He took another step. "I don't want to lose that. This. My heart was pounding so loud that I wondered if he could hear it. We haven't lost anything, I said. We found something. His gaze dropped to my lips just for a second. Then his eyes found mine again. And what are we supposed to do with it? I swallowed hard. We keep being honest, careful, gentle. His hand lifted slow and deliberate, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. I've never felt closer to anyone in my life, he said quietly. That scares me, but it also feels right. There were no fireworks in that moment, no dramatic declarations, just two people standing still in the middle of a storm they didn't ask for and choosing not to run. I didn't step forward, neither did he. But the space between us shrank all the same. Hess stayed in the kitchen with me while I plated the food, his presence calming, grounding dot at dinner. We talked about little things, a movie we both liked, his upcoming class project, an old memory that made us both laugh. It almost felt normal, but now, under the words, under these smiles, there was something more, something tender and slow building. That night, after we both said goodnight and retreated to our rooms, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I heard the floorboards creak once, maybe twice down the hall. Then silence stopped. My door never opened. Neither did his, but I knew. He was awake, and I knew we're both waiting for something. Not permission, not validation, just clarity, and I had a feeling it was coming soon. The next morning came with a softness I didn't expect. The sky was overcast, clear, cooler, and the whole house seemed to settle into a slower rhythm, like even the world outside had decided to hold its breath. I woke up earlier than usual, but I didn't move. I lay there under the blanket, listening out. It was quiet, but not empty. Some part of me sensed that Ethan was already up. Maybe in the kitchen, maybe just sitting somewhere thinking, as he often did lately. The bond between us had grown silent, but unmistakably strong. Like we could feel each other through our walls now. When I finally got up, I didn't rush. I moved through my routine slowly, deliberately. A shower, brushed hair, something a little more thoughtful than usual. A soft cardigan over a fitted tank top, a pair of worn jeans that hugged just right. I didn't ask myself why I chose them. I just did. I found him sitting on the patio out back, his hoodie wrapped loosely around his shoulders, legs stretched out, a steaming mug in his hands. He didn't hear me at first, or maybe he did and just waited for me to come to him. Morning, I said gently. He looked up, eyes shaded by the faint gray light off the sky. Hey, I sat beside him. The cushions were still warm from his body heat. He offered me his mug without a word, and I took a sip. Chamomile, I noticed. Comforting. You. Sleep okay? I asked. He hesitated. Not really, but not badly either. I smiled. That sounds like being human. We sat in silence, watching the wind stir through the trees. His hand was resting on his knee, close to mine, but not touching. Still, I could feel the warmth of his skin and the space between us. Hannah, he said suddenly, using my name for the first time in weeks, maybe months. It felt deliberate, gentle, intimate. I turned to him. Yes, I need to tell you something, and I need to know you'll really listen. My chest tightened. Of course, you have all of me. You took a long breath. I've never felt more connected to anyone than I feel to you right now. I don't know what that means yet. I don't even know what I want it to me in, but it's not something I can ignore. Anymore, I held his gaze steady and open. I know, he continued slower this time. You've always been home for me, but now it feels deeper. I don't look at you Thisam, not just as my mother, but as someone I trust with all the parts of myself, even the ones I don't understand yet. My hand moved before I could think. I rested it gently over his. His fingers closed around mine almost immediately, instinctively. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, still present. There's no shame in that, I said softly. No shame in feeling close to someone who's being your anchor. He looked down at our hands. It's not just closeness, though. It's like I see you, really see you. And you think maybe I've needed to for a long time. The wind stirred a strand of hair across my face. He reached up and tucked it behind my ear, his fingers lingering near my cheek. I didn't pull away. I didn't need to. I see it too, Ethan, I whispered. And I've watched you become someone strong, thoughtful, kind. But I also see the man you are still becoming, and I'm honored to be part of that. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. No words, no movement, just breath and warmth and shared silence. I didn't know where this leads, he said finally. You don't have to, I replied. This moment is enough. Later that day, we went for a drive. No destination, just winding roads and quiet music playing low on the radio every so often. He would glance at me, his eyes soft, and I'd glance back with the same quiet reassurance. We were building something slowly. Respectfully, carefully, we stopped at a roadside lookout point just before sunset. The sky had cleared by then, stirred with gold and rose, the light casting long shadows across the hills. We stood side by side, his hand crushing mine, then finally holding it, fingers laced like the space between us had always been waiting to be filled. I feel peaceful, he said. I nodded. Me too. We didn't need to define what we were to each other in that moment. What mattered was that the bond between us was real, deep, emotional, built on trust and time and layers of shared understanding that couldn't be undone. And as the sky darkened and we turned it back toward the car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Holiness, not from being needed, not from being amateur, but from being seen completely gently. As a woman, as a person, someone worth holding space for. Our journey wouldn't be simple. We both knew that. But for now, there was no fear in the not knowing, just the warmth off the road ahead and the quiet comfort of not walking it alone.